Hey folks, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Today's episode, we're doing a very special episode of Game Geeks, which if this were the 80s, it'd be the ABC After School Special. But instead, we're going to be talking about the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition Kickstarter. So what this is at the time of this filming, there are 8 days remaining in this Kickstarter, and, well, honestly, they're just doing okay. They've asked for $15,000 and they've only gotten $370,000. So I think we can really do more to help them, people. I mean, come on, this is Pinnacle. These are our friends. This is Savage Worlds. I think we can dig a little deeper to help them out here. This is, I hesitate to call it a completely new edition because it is very, very backwards compatible with previous editions. But more so than 3.5 going to 3.0 Dungeons & Dragons, there have been a substantial number of changes that you really need to pay attention to if you're very concerned about playing the rules according to Hoyle. So the reason for that is there's enough going on there that I think if you just, I know this, I don't have to read the book too carefully, you're going to have it come back and bite you square in the tuchus. There is going to be a free conversion document come out when they're done. So because we're rabid Savage Worlds fans, and if you're anything like me, you have the little Explorer's Guide, like 4 or 5 copies of that sitting around, you can just put this document on your table and you adjust with the new rules. Well, the problem with that is it's not going to be particularly fun to do that. It won't be okay, this is going to be easy. There's a lot here. So I recommend really digging in to see if you're interested in this. Now, there's been a lot already said about some of the changes. There's been a lot already said and done about a lot of the alterations and things that are going to be different, things they've made better, etc. I'm not going to be able to go through every single one of those because you don't want to, believe it or not, you don't want to listen to me for 2 hours talk about this. I know I have a beautiful voice. I've got lovely tone. I have almost no verbal tics or no speech impediments. If I do anything well, it's talk. But trust me, you don't want to listen to me for that long because I don't want to talk for that long. My mouth will get dry, I'll get bored. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit some of the highlights, and I'm going to be right up front with you. A lot of what they've done has been really good. I think the changes will be good. I think they'll be effective, and I think they'll get to the point of what we try to do with Savage Worlds, which is the fast, furious fun, a lot more efficiently than what we have seen before. There are some changes that I'm not particularly fond of. I'm going to be blunt about that. And we're going to talk about those as we go through. As I mentioned before, easily 80 to 85% of the core game is still there. You still roll a die, you still roll a wild die, you still take the higher of the two, add any modifiers, look for a target number. Successes start at 4 and scale upwards with raises from there. Dice can still explode, or ace as it's called in this game, where if you roll the maximum amount, you roll it again, and so on. That's still there. We still use cards for initiative. The bulk of what has changed has been in the details. So we're going to kind of walk through this in an abbreviated form and see what some of those are. The races that they bring in are essentially a combination of what we saw in the fantasy guide and in the science fiction guide. They're all in there now. The only one that I really noticed instantly was not there were the Florians, which are the plant people. I've got a soft spot in my heart for plant people because I was a big Farscape fan and the Delvians. But by and large, if you want it, it's there. There's also a very ample race creator attached, which is most of what they've taken from what was in the core book initially, the fantasy book and the sci-fi book. Hindrances are mostly unchanged. They're still there. They're what they were before. There's a couple that have changed a little bit. They seem to have a lot of overlap, so I'm not entirely certain how they separate. For instance, driven versus vow. They are textually very, very similar. I'd have to really dig in or have someone explain to me what they see the differences being. The only reason this is important is you really don't want a player double dipping for extra points for the one flaw that they're going to try to capitalize on. Hesitant seems to be a little bit undervalued as you go through that list. For example, hesitant makes you take the worst of 2 cards that you draw in initiative, whereas there is an edge, level-headed, that makes you take the best of the 2 cards. The reason I think it's a little underpowered is hesitant is a minor drawback. I would have made that major, but at this point, I'm really splitting hairs, I realize. So I'm not going to get into that too much. Skills, now this is where they've done a lot of expansion and consolidation at the same time. All of your magic using skills from psionics to weird science to faith to sorcery are all included in the skill list now. Several have also been consolidated. For example, climb, throwing, and swimming are now consolidated into an athletics check. Streetwise is no longer a skill, it is now an edge. And now you have base skills. Every starting character has 5 skills in which they have a D4. Now, I kind of like this because what it does is it basically provides a baseline for everyone to start with. Now, that's also modifiable for the setting. Apparently, this isn't the first time that's shown up. The one time I remember seeing it is in Agents of Oblivion, where all starting Oblivion agents had 4 skills that they could that they started at a D4 in. Now, because of that, fantasy games or other less educated games now start at a lower skill point cost than the standard 15, whereas modern or advanced settings will have 15 skill points on top of those additional D4 to represent a better overall educational system for the world. Edges see a lot of facelift here. And this is part of where the wheels fall off of it a little bit for me. They've gotten rid of charisma as a derived attribute. I'll be honest, I don't like this. I understand their reasonings for it. I understand a lot of people are saying where if you buy the right combination of edges, you can get like a +6 or a +7 in charisma, which means that it can be game breaking. Ladies and gentlemen, I have played that character with a +6 charisma on one occasion. Let me tell you how many times I broke the game with a +6 charisma. This many. You just can't do it. If the GM rather, is on their toes and they're paying attention, you can't charm or intimidate or streetwise your way out of every single situation. You just can't do it. So this whole idea of, well, really high charisma makes it broken, doesn't really hold water with me. Because if you've got a weak game master, then maybe. But if you've got a weak game master, there's a lot of other things that'll break the game before that. Okay, rant over. That's really my biggest issue with this new edition of Savage Worlds is that. So instead, let's take the example of charisma. Instead of persuasive, which gives a +2 to charisma, persuasive now allows you to re-roll any failed persuasion check, assuming it wasn't double ones. Allows you to just completely get rid of that. It didn't specify. I'm assuming it's once per attempt, and I would certainly read it that way. Other changes to the edges. Aristocrat is what Noble was, which really helps you now more with networking and getting through high society rather than it does charming people. So there's a lot of work that the edges have in there. This is where you really need to dig in and see what's different. I'll be right up front about it, because a lot of things have changed in here. Consolidating skills, okay, we can get used to that. That doesn't take much. A lot of us have already started consolidating skills anyway. There's an entirely new suite of edges for powers or magic or supers, whatever you want to call them, for Savage Worlds. Now, some of them are simply making what used to be focused in on one type available to all. For example, in the previous version of the rules, Wizard allowed you to take for every raise you get on an arcane roll, you reduce 1 from your PowerPoint cost. Now, anyone can do that, and it's called channeling. Additionally, there's a very big section on making magic items, whether you're an arcanist, an alchemist, or a gadgeteer. That's all there, and it's a pretty comprehensive, thorough way of doing it. Now, one of the things I'm most excited about in this new edition of Savage Worlds is expanded rules for bennies. So with the new bennies rules, you've still got the same standard 3 you had before, which was reroll, recover from being shaken, and soak damage. Now, however, there are some extras. You can draw a new action card with a benny. You can reroll all the damage, so that one thing that was once a setting rule is now hard-coded in. You can gain D6 power points by spending a benny, and you can also influence the story. So dramatic editing is now something that all players can do. Extra actions, you can now do as much as you want to in a round, but by God, there's a -2 cumulative penalty for it. Even if you don't end up doing it, it's still there. So you're going to very quickly run to the point where this is just getting ridiculous. I'm going to stay with 1 or 2. The chase rules are generally simplified. And while I haven't tested these myself, they look like they would work easier than what was there before. I'll be honest, that's always been the one point in Savage Worlds where I just fall on my face, is I just could not figure out the chase rules. These, I don't know if I've matured or I'm just finally smart enough to figure them out, but these I have a feeling that I'm going to be able to work with. There's also quick encounters, which is if you really don't want to run a full-blown encounter, you just want to roll a couple of dice, see what happens, and narrate most of it, this is the option for you. There's also a wide variety of applications for this. It doesn't just have to be a fight. It can be a heist. It can be any number of things. So, the powers also get a pretty big facelift. At the beginning of the powers section, there is a large table of power modifiers. If you want your attack to be armor piercing, or to have fade damage as it goes on, heavy weapon, whatever, you pay more power points for it. So if you go too deep into this, you're gonna blow your wad pretty damn quick as a low-level caster. But if you're careful and you know what you're doing, then you can really expand and modify what it is you're going to be working on. I think something that is missing from this edition that I wish would be in there is some of the trapping section from the Fantasy Companion. I think having extra trappings in there to modify the powers as they go along would really help toward more than just my blast is a small swarm of screaming, chattering skulls flying at them versus a fireball. I think actual mechanical differences, while it does add a little bit more for you to have to, remember and keep going, I think that would really add to the flavor when they just want to get away from saying, I cast blast. This is something that you could certainly call from previous editions or that they may add in later on in various supplements such as sci-fi or fantasy themselves. You need this. I always kind of end these things with, do you need this book? Yeah, you're going to need this. If you're a Savage Worlds player, considering everything going forward is going to be written for this format, I think you definitely do need this book. I think you are going to need this new set of rules. Now, I'm going to just reiterate, folks, they're not doing too well. I'm a little worried about this. They're asking for $15K. They're only at $377. I don't know if they're to the point where they can put spinning rims on their jet ski or not, but I think we all need to just kind of tighten our belts and we're going to get this no matter what. At this point with the Kickstarter, it's what extra cool stuff can they give us? There's a wide variety of extra cool things that are coming in from the Kickstarter. I point you to the Kickstarter page, which is at the address seen below. Go take a look at it. Look at their campaign. Again, as of the time of this filming, there's just over a week left. So I invite you to go take a look at it. And if you like Savage Worlds, pitch in. We all know you're going to get the book eventually anyway. So go ahead, take a good hard look, pitch in and get it. You won't be disappointed. For Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.